Hello, this is Phil Mitchell, Discovery-Based Retail. Thanks for dropping by our website today, and thanks for your interest in this video. I'm going to be talking to you today about balancing the space and inventory in your store. This is a process that all store managers or owners should do, but very few get it done. So we're going to teach you about a tool that we've got to help make the process much more manageable. You can see here that we've got a picture of a store. This was an actual store. We redesigned it. I hate the traditional style design that it had before, and I'd love to show you the new design, but that's for another day and time. So you can see that right here, this represents, let me draw it out here for you, the sales space. And if I were to look at an individual department, let's say that one department takes up this much space, those two gondolas, both sides. The first thing that we would do is we would measure that halfway into the aisles, because it takes up half of that aisle. You can see I've got that indicated by the arrows. And then that would be the space that it takes up. We would measure that space. You can see there's 288 square feet devoted to that particular department. And then we would go around the store. We would repeat the departments one by one, circling them, and then identifying them with colored rectangles, measuring those rectangles, and then computing the square footage for each of those spaces. Now, once you've finished, you'll have your square footage figure, so you can go to the next step of the process. The next step of the process involves a calculator we've written. Okay, so we'll continue now. This is a screenshot of the calculator that I was telling you about. And in the examples that you've just seen, you've learned how to measure the respective departments, how to compute the square footage devoted to those departments. Now it's to pull your figures, enter your inventory and your sales for each one of those departments. The gray areas in both the top and the bottom of the sheets are the areas, the figures that you can adjust or change. You can see that we've entered them up here, and if I were to change this one, let's say you're working in a men's store, this might be men's suits, and it might be men's shoes or whatever. The categories are unimportant at this point because this will work with any type of store or any type of product mix. For this demonstration, we're using a hardware store as an example. Yeah, you notice that when I change the things up here, they change down here. And what we're looking at here is a before and an after look at the assortment of your store. So currently, it all reads the same. It's just exactly the same down here as it is up here because we haven't changed anything, obviously. So you can see there's 884 square feet devoted to this plumbing department, which carries an inventory of $41,486, which has produced sales of $110,000. So the sales per square foot were computed by the spreadsheet, as well as the space productivity ratio. Now, if each of these departments was producing at exactly the same level, each one would read 100% because they would all be contributing at an equal amount. You will never get them to where they contribute at an equal amount, and we'll mention some of the reasons as we go along here. Over here, this computes the inventory per square foot, and also a figure that we call the inventory holding ratio. Once again, if every square foot of your store had exactly the same amount of inventory per dollars per square foot, this would all read 100%. And once again, it's never going to happen. So you can see that the spreadsheet has highlighted this to some problem areas. If we get this adjusted properly and the way that it should be adjusted in a very productive store, these will either be mostly greens, there might be a yellow, there might even be a red for a reason that we'll talk about in a few moments. But what you do is you go through here and in the virtual scenario you start adjusting departments. Okay, you can see that this department, let's take a large department. Let's take this one. Plumbing, there's 884 square feet. What would happen then if we would expand that department to 1,000 feet, let's say? Okay, now you can see this cell has turned aqua blue to indicate that it's a departure from the original settings. So once you complete this process, then you can easily look down here and see the blue cells and then kind of have a battle plan for what you need to do as far as adjusting space and inventory for that matter, over a period of time. So you can see that right now we've still got about the same amount of yellows and reds. We've changed the position of a green. The reason we've changed the position of the green and these numbers have changed is because these equations are all rubber banded together because they're computing portions or percentages of a whole. So we'll just follow through this process. You can see the space productivity in this department is extremely good, and it's because it's a teeny weeny department. So I'm going to expand that slightly just to show you how those things change as we go. Now I will repeat this process. I won't put you through the excruciating part of watching me change every number. So I'll come back here in just a few moments. Okay, we're back here now. And you can see that I have made a lot of changes that's indicated by these aqua cells. A couple of points that I want to make that I forgot to mention to you first time. Let's say I change this department to 1,000 feet. You can see down here that it says I must reconcile the floor space because what it's telling me is, hey, I haven't used up the total square footage that I had allotted in the store. So it says I have to add 110 square feet to bring that back into balance somewhere. So I'm going to put it back right where I took it out there. Now you can see that that leaves this square red saying that the productivity would not be as good in that department for the square footage that's devoted to it. But the point is the paint department, just by its the nature of its product, is very, very bulky. So I know that that's a possibility. So as I said earlier, you'll never get these things to balance 100%, nor do you want to, because you'll have to use your knowledge of the store to compute or to make decisions like that. And now just another point, if I want to start over, because this can actually be done a number of different ways. You can start with the smallest department and work that way, or just start with conscious thought, hey, I would like to expand this department just based upon I think there's more potential, or I want to bring in another category within that department. And so you'd start there. You'd increase that department size, and then based upon these numbers, then help you determine where you wanted to subtract the size that you ultimately needed to gather. The neat thing about this, and you'll have to activate the macros in the spreadsheet, but you can click the reset button and automatically it will just have you start over and you're back to where you were. So in a moment here we're going to talk about the way the inventory side of this works. Now we want to take a look at the inventory side of the spreadsheet and how that can function and aid you. Anytime that we make a switch in a department size, let's just say that I'll make this size, and it's indicated that it's been changed, and you can see down here that says, hey, I have to reconcile this floor space. So those things we've already talked about. But now you can see that the inventory holding ratio is quite a bit changed too. It's saying that, okay, if I increase the size of that department, if I don't increase the inventory, I drop the inventory holding ratio to probably an unacceptable percent in balance with the others. So there too I have to make some changes. Now you can see that my metal products in this particular case, I have a very, very high inventory holding ratio. So what I would do over time, I would try to lean the inventory up in that department. That would allow me to add inventory of $11,000, and so I'm just going to add some of that right back here. And now you can see that brings the inventory balance. This is working in a virtual world, and what you can do is once you have your completely balanced here, as balanced as you want to get it, knowing that you have to use your working knowledge of the store, you do the same thing with the inventory holding ratio, and then outline the changes that have been done in the aqua squares, and formulate yourself a battle plan. So for instance, if you need to shrink a square footage of a department, I've had people say, Phil, how do I shrink that department? Well, the first, you just go through a series of exercises. First of all, you make sure that you get all the slow moving dog items out of the inventory, and I don't care how good you are, you've got some of those, I know you do. Okay, then beyond that, you start looking for white space within the department, and you pegboard things closer together, set your shelves closer, you get rid of the white space, because remember, we're looking at the God's eye view or the bird's eye view of your store. We're looking down on it, deciding how we can compact the square footage from that perspective. So that means you have to condense it on the vertical. So you might have to use longer pegboard hooks in some cases, or deeper shelves, just so that you can compact and you can regain that footprint that you need to make the changes. that's just about a 3-step process that you would go through, and you might not be able to move from 884 to 1250 in one swoop. It might have to be something that you do in steps, but the point is that you would be working toward an ideal. How often should you review this? How often should you change it? Probably you should review it annually, maybe every 6 months at first when you're making some broad brush strokes, and that way you work, like I said, toward an ideal. If you like the way the spreadsheet looks, please visit us online at www.discoverdbr.com. There's a lot of information there that you'll find useful and helpful, I believe. So thank you for your time, and thanks for listening.